The country of Iran has a long and complicated history, filled with great achievements, violent struggles, and larger-than-life leaders. Iran, previously known as Persia, is credited with a wide range of cultural contributions, including the vertical windmill, medical anesthesia, canal building, standardized weights and measures, the invention of archery, and more. To this day, Iran continues to contribute important scientific and cultural ideas to the world. At the same time, however, Iran has recently become one of the worst countries in the world in terms of human rights. Since the Islamic Revolution in 1979, which ushered in a new hardline religious government, human rights protections have declined significantly throughout the country. Under the new fundamentalist regime, human rights violations have been reported on a much larger scale than anything seen under previous governments. In recent years, torture, corrupt trials, rape, unjust imprisonment, and public executions have reached unprecedented levels. As of 2014, Iran led the world in the number of prisoners executed per capita, surpassing even China in this respect. In addition, the government has cracked down on essential freedoms nationwide, including freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and freedom of the press. And yet, despite this newly hostile environment, there are numerous organizations and activists who are working hard to reform Iran and reduce the level of government oppression there. One of the loudest and most effective voices of reform today is Shirin Ebadi, an Iranian lawyer and human rights activist who won a Nobel Peace Prize for her efforts to bring about greater justice in Iran. With a reputation for being bold and relentless, Ms. Ebadi has been pushing for expanded human rights in Iran for more than 30 years. To this day, she continues to defend the voiceless and fight for the rights of the oppressed, especially women and children. Over time, she has become an internationally known advocate for peace, a champion of individual freedom, and a firm believer in the notion that traditional Islam and Western democratic ideals can exist side by side without contradiction. Ebadi offers a unique brand of idealism and pragmatism that makes her a force to be reckoned with. This is her story. Shirin Ebadi was born into a middle-class Muslim family on June 21, 1947, in Hamadan, Iran. Growing up, she was greatly influenced by her father, who was a prominent lawyer and a respected professor. At a young age, Shirin Ebadi decided to follow in her father's footsteps. After completing primary and secondary school, she attended law school in Tehran, graduating in 1968 at the age of 21. After graduation, she spent just 6 months as an apprentice, and soon after began serving as a judge, making her the first female judge in the history of Iran, a remarkable achievement, especially for someone so young. In 1975, Shirin Ebadi was appointed president of Bench 24 in Tehran's city court, the first Iranian woman to achieve this distinction. Within 4 years, however, she was forced to resign because of the changes brought about by the Islamic Revolution. Under the new regime, led by Ayatollah Khomeini, women were forbidden to hold any positions of power. As a result, Ebadi was demoted to a secretarial position, despite her education and credentials. Although she protested, along with several other female judges, she was unable to regain her position. Within a few months, she decided to retire from her position as a public official and pursue her own private legal practice. Even as a private professional, however, Ebadi was blocked at every turn. The government refused to grant her a license to open up her own practice simply because she was a woman. Frustrated by the new policies, Ebadi decided to join an all-male law firm in the 1980s and immerse herself in human rights law, hoping to fight the system through legal means. It was a challenge in such a conservative climate, but Ebadi pressed on. In 1989, after the death of Ayatollah Khomeini, a more moderate regime came into power. As a result, there were fewer gender restrictions, opening up new opportunities for Ebadi and other professional women. She was finally granted permission to open her own business, but it took 3 years for the paperwork to go through. In the meantime, Ebadi taught human rights courses at Tehran University and wrote several books and articles on the subject. By the time she finally received her license to open a private practice in 1992, she was fully immersed in human rights law, so she continued to make it the focus of her work. In particular, Ebadi began to focus on cases involving victimized women and children, often taking on these cases with no charge to her clients. One of Ebadi's most high-profile cases involved the torture and murder of a 9-year-old girl by her own father. Although the father was an established criminal and drug addict, he was able to gain custody of the daughter from his ex-wife because the law blatantly favored men over women. Given the biases of the law, it seemed all but impossible for Ebadi to win the case and get some kind of punishment against the father. Nevertheless, Ebadi was eager to take on the challenge in the hopes of gaining some measure of justice for the girl's bereaved mother. In presenting her case, Ebadi argued that the state's custody laws were unfair and that the father should be punished severely for murdering a defenseless child. Despite all the obstacles against her, Ebadi beat the odds and won the case, much to everyone's surprise. Even though the father was sentenced to less than 1 year in prison, it was considered a significant victory for human rights because it changed custody laws in Iran and established precedents for the rights of children. Inspired by her victory, Ebadi continued to pursue cases involving child abuse and murder, hoping to push the limits of the law and dramatically expand legal protections for children. Over time, Ebadi eventually co-founded a number of organizations that work to promote human rights, including the Association for Support of Children's Rights in Iran, established in 1995, and the Center for the Defense of Human Rights, founded in 2001. During this time, Ebadi also traveled extensively around the world to discuss human rights and the importance of legal protections for women and children. Over the last 20 years, Ebadi has won many awards and honors. She is the first Iranian to ever win the Nobel Peace Prize, an honor bestowed on her on October 10, 2003, for her significant and pioneering efforts to secure basic human rights in Iran. Unfortunately, despite the efforts of Ebadi and others to reform Iran, the nation took a turn for the worse in 2008 as a more repressive regime once again came to power. One of the first groups targeted by the regime was political activists. Within a few months, the government shut down Ebadi's Center for the Defense of Human Rights, making a clear statement. In the following year, when Ebadi was giving a lecture in Spain, a major crackdown against progressives began in Iran, with many activists arrested, beaten, and sentenced to death. Fearing for her life, Ebadi decided not to return to Iran. Since then, she has been living in exile, fighting the government from afar. In spite of the recent setbacks, Ebadi has not given up. Instead, she continues to advocate for a more moderate and freer Iran in the hopes that the country she dreams of will one day become a reality. "I sound like a dreamer, I know," Ebadi says. "The challenge facing us today is to think like dreamers, but act in a pragmatic manner. Let us remember that many of humanity's accomplishments began as a dream."